this design, we had a number of constraints and what we call figures of merit on our studies that led us to this particular design. We wanted to launch as soon as possible. We had a completely flat budget profile, and we had a minimum requirement for the initial capability of at least 70 metric tons. It turns out that one of the things we learned, and it's actually a pretty simple thing, is a development curve looks like this. So every time you want to do something new, it takes a lot of money and a hump, and then it finally comes back down on the back end. So under a flat curve, you want to minimize the number of developments. At any one time, if you add a development on top of a development on top of a development, it's like adding amplitude in frequency world, right? So you end up with a curve that looks like this. What's nice about this rocket is the engines on the bottom, no development curve. We actually have the flight engines. These engines have already flown in space. They're human rated. The booster design, we flew those for 30 years. We added a fifth segment. We were already working on the development of that during the Ares 1 program, so we were coming off our development curve on that. The ICPS, what we call the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, so that we didn't have to do both the core stage and the upper stage at the same time, that's a Delta IV upper stage with a few modifications. We've stretched the tank, we've added an extra hydrazine tank, but it's essentially a Delta IV upper stage. No development curve. Our only development curve is in the core, and what you're about to see out here, the welding tools and things like that. Even the avionics were well along in their development as part of the Ares 1 program, because those avionics were being used for the upper stage of Ares 1. So what that did, if you think of a whole bunch of things like engines and things and Delta IV upper stage that are all already developed, no development curve. If you think about boosters coming off of is, an upside down one of these creates a development curve for the core, right? So that, when you hear about us working under a flat curve for the last 4 years and being done with critical design review 4 months early on the core, that's how we were able to do it. So eventually we want to get to 130 metric tons. The nice thing, there's really three major things you want to do to get to 130 to have the ultimate rocket, to do anything you ever wanted to do, including the mission Mars, the Mars missions. You want a fairing, and you can do we've got 5 meter versions that essentially take existing fairings today that are used in the other community. 8.4 meters, which would essentially be straight right here and come up and then come in with the ogive, or the 10 meter, and that's when you see it even on this 27.5 meter foot diameter core, it hammerheads out a little bit.
I'm sorry, is there payload in that fairing, or that's just more like just kind of deflection and just the ability to kind of like move the rocket through space?
Well, it's got to do both, right? So it's the payload goes inside of this, and the fairing protects the payload while you go up through the atmosphere and get out of the atmosphere. Then it moves out of the way, and it's structurally tied to the upper stage, and so all that space inside of there is a payload itself. So,
but it's still attached to the upper stage until you're ready to release it.
Right, and then
the fairing just kind of playing that game while you get out through like the
fairing
bubble.
Protects it from the heat and the air and the environment that's coming down on it, all the acoustics and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now Orion, which you'll see, there's an Orion inside of this. It actually has an ogive over it too to give it some protection. And then those pop off when it gets into space. And then, so I mentioned with the fairing, then the upper stage, this section right here. So you see today the core goes up to, just show you right here, the core goes to here. Same core comes across. So instead of this ICPS right here, you have an upper stage. And then advanced boosters. One of the things we're really interested in is allowing both liquid or solid solutions for the future boosters with even more power. And so you see the liquid boosters there on the side.
Yeah, those boosters are totally different than the ones that are on your first one on the left.
Yeah, they could be. There are solid solutions as well. For example, if you were to go with a solid, we know of two technologies. One is you have composite casings instead of metal, and so that makes it more efficient and can hold higher pressure.